All right, hey everybody. All right, we're ready to go again. Welcome to another edition of In Conversation here on Fired Up Network. I'm your host, Ryan Payton. Always great to have you on board, whether you're watching, listening on one of the many platforms that we are available on. Appreciate the time. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Payton75 and also at Fired Up Net. Today's show is going to focus primarily on the NHL and also hockey, but not so much on the statistics and the fun stuff. We'll throw in some fun stuff because let's face it, despite all the stories that continue to happen with hockey, it is a fun game. So we'll do that too. But kind of diving into the things behind the scenes that unfortunately we've been seeing a lot of lately, not just at the NHL level, but other levels as well. Most recently, Jordan Subban, for example. So we'll get to that as well. But my guest today is Tara Slone, Rogers Hometown Hockey on Sportsnet, also top of her game. And she has joined me here on In Conversation. I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate the time. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Kind of ironic. We chatted just a few minutes ago, seconds maybe, about this being Bell Let's Talk Day. We've been navigating, as you know, for the past 20 plus months, whatever we're still doing. How have you been with all this? Because I know you can probably speak for everybody. It's been a tough go.
Yeah, I always preface it by saying, it's a relative experience always. And, relatively speaking, I'm very fortunate. I kept my job this whole time. I have a roof over my head. I have food to eat. My family has been in good health, physical health. But mental health is the other side of it. And I think we are going through a collective trauma and everybody's feeling it in one way or another or a variety of different ways. It's been really challenging. I'm home with my daughter, and I think everybody knows that in Ontario, our kids have been home from school more than any other place in North America.
Yeah.
So that presents lots of challenges, and it's a challenging time. And I think this latest wave has everybody a little bit more disheartened, but hopefully we're starting to see the sunshine through.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm in the same situation as you, and I admire everybody who is going through what they're going through. But I really admire the kids. It doesn't matter what age, even those in university, but those in school having to adjust the way that they've had to adjust. So your daughter, especially, because we're talking about you here. So that's great to hear. That's my whole point in this. You talked about mental health, and maybe we'll just start with that because a number of months ago, in 2021, because we're in 22 now, you had these major athletes, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, coming out to say, look, I'm not there. I don't have it. And I'm strong enough to say no. To me, Tara, you and I can talk about this on this platform, and you can do it on yours. I can do it separately too. We can talk to whoever. But when those two people, among all the other athletes who do that, who have such a massive say in the world, that was such an incredible moment for me. Two big moments.
Yeah, stunning. And, other athletes to include in that conversation, I think Jonathan Drouin, Carey Price,
Right.
and even Stephanie Labbe, who after winning a gold medal went into a funk in Tokyo. But Simone Biles for me was the most stunning because she was in the midst of competition.
Right.
And she had, the weight of the world on her shoulders in so many different ways. She had been through years of abuse with Larry Nassar, had to come forward publicly. Really, I think the reason that she even stayed in gymnastics was because she wanted to show USA Gymnastics that she could do it in spite of them.
Right.
But she's the greatest of all time, and everybody had these incredible expectations of her. And so in the midst of competition to say, I'm not only I can't do this, I know I can't do this, but I won't do this. And,
Right.
it's dangerous for me to do this. It was relatively unprecedented, and she took a lot of heat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in response to that.
I know.
Instead of
Yeah.
compassion, I saw like, how could you let your country down, blah, blah, blah. But it was an incredible act of courage. It was an incredible act of radical self-care. And I think it demonstrated, that athletes are humans.
Mhm.
I think we need to acknowledge that at every
Mhm.
step of the way.
Yeah.
And that you have to take care of yourself, and that has to come, caring for yourself and others has to come before representing your team.
Right. I agree. And good for Simone. And I'm with you with the social media and how they attacked her, the toxicity of social media. And I know you're very outspoken with a number of issues that you feel strongly about. And we'll get into more of that in a second. But a lot of things that you say people will agree with. And there's
Mhm,
also things that you say people won't agree with. And if you
mhm.
get attacked like that, I just, like you, probably even before I ask you this, I just find it so wrong and just so kind of sneaky to do it behind closed doors and attack somebody because of how they feel. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in right now.
Yeah, it's a very polarized space that we're in currently. I mean, it's always polarized, people are
Yeah,
always divided, but I think there's something about social media that invites and maybe even forces people to take a side. If you want any kind of reaction, you can't be somewhere in the middle. You have to like decide what you're
pick a
what
side. Yeah,
what position you're going to be in.
yeah, yeah,
Um and it's a hard time. Like we said, we've gone through a collective trauma. People are not great. Let's face it.
yeah.
There's a lot of anger and aggression and politically divided. So it's a bit of a nasty time out there.
I want to get into Kyle Beach. And when
Mhm.
you were on Rogers Hometown Hockey on that day after all the allegations came out and the cover up and Mr. Bettman in his press conference, all these different things that we saw and the cover up, for lack of two better words, you said what you did, and I admired that at the time, and I still do. Take me through the process before you said those things, because to me that took a lot of guts. A lot of people would agree with what you said, some didn't, but it was also this big entity of the NHL here that was
Right.
under attack for essentially covering up something that they knew, specifically Chicago. And for Kyle Beach, the victim of all this, you have to put him front and center of everything. So just kind of before you did what you did and said what you said, take me through your thought process.
Well, I think it was a culmination of a lot of months of watching and hoping the NHL would react to things differently. Um, I think when George Floyd was murdered and there was a real strong stand taken from a lot of different leagues, the WNBA really led the way,
Right.
the NBA. Um, it just seemed to me, I mean, the NHL couldn't even use the word racism. There was just like this unwillingness to take a real stand and state a position that was meaningful. And then it just seemed like there was just this whole like at every turn, even though there are great people in hockey doing great things
Yes,
all over the
absolutely.
place.
Absolutely.
So none of this detracts from that.
Right.
Um, but just everywhere I looked, it would just kind of be like so disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that day we happened to have a Chicago game on Rogers Hometown Hockey.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously the Kyle Beach interview just stunned everybody and I
Yeah.
think was top of mind. But on top of that, we had Chicago.
Mhm.
And then that day, Gary Bettman did that press conference. And I think if he had had like one iota
Mhm.
of humanity in his response,
Mhm.
it might have been different. I might not have been compelled to kinda lay it all out there, but
But there was none.
but there was none.
No.
I mean, yeah, I
That took me back
understand
too. That
yeah, I
yeah.
understand he's a lawyer and
Right.
there's sort of a lot of that they're probably navigating and how they construct sentences.
Mhm. Which I
But
understand. I understand that.
yeah, I get that, but I also, like, I just didn't see any compassion from him. And I saw arrogance and I saw him patting himself on the back for the work
Right.
that had been done. Not that nothing has been done, but not enough has been done. And nothing, I don't think, a lot of concrete work. And then what he said about Sheldon Kennedy, and he kind of
Yeah.
dismissed the work that Sheldon Kennedy did. I just felt like,
It was too much.
it was too much.
Yeah.
And so I was invited to use that platform.
Mhm.
I am grateful eternally to the crew, the producers, to Ron for providing that space for me. Nobody asked to see or hear what I was going to say
Mm.
at all. Nobody vetted me.
Wow.
I made it clear I was editorializing on my own behalf
Right.
and wasn't
Right.
speaking on behalf of the network. But yeah, it was just sort of that moment in time where I just felt like I had to take that space just then.
And you did, and it was very well done. You dove in and you came up breathing. So, and that's the most important thing. I was reading recently that you were featured in the Hockey News Money and Power issue, and you were surprised to see that. You didn't know.
No, I didn't know.
Talk about that a bit, because that was kind of a neat story.
Well, they have a real I mean, I'm not part of the money or power section. Let's
Right.
just make that part very clear.
Well, you have power. I think you have power. Anyway, carry on. Yeah.
Well, there's power in social advocacy
Right.
and good for
Right.
the Hockey News, I think, to recognize that. So, I mean, I was very humbled to make that discovery that I was in the social advocates section,
Yeah.
amongst some really, amazing people like, Curtis Gabriel, like
Mhm.
Chanel Keenan, like just people who are doing really, really wonderful work. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that my voice carries, any impact, and that's just I feel compelled to use it. I'm lucky enough to have reached that point in my life and career, and so I just do.
And you need to, and I think that's great. Speaking of that, I've been whether it's this platform or any other shows I've done the last number of years in different channels, etc., stations, whether it be on TV or the radio. I'm a huge advocate and supporter of women in sports, and I had this interview last year, maybe the year before actually, when 2020. So lose track of time. Catherine Switzer. Is her name, and it was 1967, and she ran the Boston Marathon, and she was the first woman to run in the male-dominated Boston Marathon. And a quick story about that is she signed up as Kay Switzer. So when they looked down the list, they didn't think that it was a woman. They, okay, Switzer, okay, we'll give you the bib, off we go. And then when she was running, and apologies if you know the story, again, when she was running, this camera truck was following her, and the director of the race saw her, leapt off the truck, ran after her, and tried to push her off the course. To which her boyfriend at the time, who was running, and a big burly marathon guy, not marathon guys aren't burly, but he was big, shoved this person out of the way, and he looked to Catherine and said, "Whatever you do, keep your head down and keep going." Just kind of segueing into where women have come from and
Right.
get into some things too. It's just amazing to think all those years ago and from then to where we're at now.
We've come a long way, but I mean, not long enough. First of all, that wasn't even that long ago,
Right.
when you really think about it.
It was last time the Leafs won the cup, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to Leafs fans, it's a long
Right.
time
It's
ago.
it's a long time.
But I even look at, when women were given the right to vote or recognized as person, as advocated by the famous five, like
Right.
it's barely, it's just been over 100 years. So yes, we've made strides, but and I certainly don't ever want to be the person that is always glass half empty.
Right.
But I think when you sort of get into the world of advocacy, yes, you recognize the strides that have been made, but you also, we're just constantly pushing for more. And so for me, we have these great moments like what happened at the Olympics. I mean, women absolutely dominated.
Amazing.
If your
Yeah.
name wasn't Damian Warner or Andre DeGrasse,
Right.
you were a woman.
Yeah.
And we have incredible moments like that, but then there's still no elite level soccer league in Canada. So, all of these players, Kadisha Buchanan plays in Europe, Christine
Yeah.
Sinclair plays in the United States.
It's a shame.
And so, we have this recognition every 4 years that these women athletes are frigging incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But still, only 5% of our coverage in the media is dedicated to women's sport. So I'm just, the push needs to happen, and some big time buy-in still needs to happen.
Does it start when when you're a girl, like, in the pre-adolescent years, then the adolescent years? Does it begin with the opportunities that are given to young girls? And if it still does, what can be done to give them more? And who should be, outside of yourself or me, who should be doing that for these young athletes who knows who they're going to be?
Mhm.
Well, we certainly know, based on the women that we see right now in sports, they are among the elite right now.
I mean, I think it's at all levels, I think, it is a big deal to see yourself represented,
Right.
It's for a young hockey player of color, it's really important to see a Soroya Tinker or a Sarah Nurse,
Yeah.
you know, or a Bridget Lequette. Like those things are meaningful. That's the type of thing that can, you know, give you something aspirational. We know that girls drop out of sport, and tend to stay out of sport, which not only, impacts the sport trajectory, but it impacts their levels of just physical literacy. And we
Mm-hmm.
know that sport lends itself to leadership, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, the programs um, like Chandra Crawford's program, and I've heard the name is escaping me for some reason, even though I love them. Anyway, it will come to me.
Yeah.
But programs that are designed to, create mentorship programs and keep girls in sport. So I think it's at every level. It's incumbent upon the top levels to model something,
Mm-hmm.
but at the lower levels, I think girls have to be treated in some ways just differently, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
I think having a girls team for some girls is really important because they don't want to play with the boys anymore. Like
Yeah.
there's just so many, it's so multi-pronged.
It's interesting.
Fast and female, by the way. Sorry. That
There.
just escaped me.
Yes.
The Chandra
Okay.
Crawford's program. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that girls want to be treated differently, because a lot of the narrative and discussion in these, day and age, for example, Megan Rapinoe in the U.S. has been very adamant about equality with the U.S. national women's soccer team and the men's, all that type of stuff. And it seems the women want the same as the men now. But I agree with you. It's a neat angle to take, that when they grow up, they kind of want to be treated differently, but the same, and then try to get on that equal playing field if they can. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I certainly know that Rapinoe and Christine St. Clair as well. I remember when Canada won the gold medal in soccer. Didn't Christine St. Clair said something like, "Well, if this doesn't put Canada's women's soccer on the map, then I don't know what does." And that was really
Yeah.
telling to me.
Yeah. And she's been pretty outspoken about,
Yeah.
the fact that you can't watch that level of soccer in this country,
Yeah.
even though all these players are out there. Yeah. I mean, I don't think, yes, of course. I mean, there's equity and then there's equality.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, I do think that some girls tend to drop out if there aren't the right programs for them. I mean, we know that girls get pushed out by having to change in broom closets
Yeah.
when they're playing on boys hockey teams,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
there are adjustments that have to be made. So, I mean, certainly, somebody like Chandra could speak more to that, but I do think mentorship is key. Mentorship is key, modeling is key, representation is key, and leadership is key in
Yeah.
terms of, we need more women in positions of leadership.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line.
You need to have a voice, and you need to have a voice to let the other voices speak. I'm with you when it comes to girls changing in closets or whatever. My niece out in PEI, she's a great hockey player, but she plays with the guys a lot of the time. So she's been through this quite a bit. So I've had a number of conversations with her. Speaking of women in power, great segue. We didn't plan this, but it sounds like we did. Emily Castonguay.
Mm.
Great news. Talk about breaking down some barriers. First assistant GM in the history of the Canucks, etc. This is something, to me. It's number one, a massive step, and we see in a lot of different sports women taking the roles of coaching or upper management or whatever it is. And now, with them getting so close, the discussion in my mind becomes, the next step is, say, for example, Emily to become a
Mhm.
GM at some point. Will we see it someday in the NHL, a woman being a general manager? I sure hope we do.
I certainly hope we do too. Did a great interview with Cassie Campbell Pascal on Rogers Hometown Hockey this week, and she talked about Emily. And the point that she made that I hadn't really thought about. I mean, Emily's like, she's so beyond competent, right?
Right.
She's beyond qualified. Um, but as Cassie pointed out, she's not sort of the like token figure. Like she's not a former national team member, right?
Right.
She's not
Right.
somebody everybody knows their name but doesn't know their level of managerial experiences. Like people might not even know who Emily is.
Hmm.
And she's a hockey person who's been, steering her whole career towards this moment.
Yeah.
And so she was truly hired on the merit of her accomplishments. And so I think that's a great first step. And then, of course, it sort of, I think in a way will signal to the rest of the NHL, okay, wait, you guys did it first. Maybe we can start taking some,
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
some bigger leaps. But God, at the very least, like, start looking outside the existing pool. But there are certainly some very, very competent women who are already working in hockey who belong in positions like that.
You know what? It just takes one, right? It just takes one. And you do what you do on Rogers Hometown Hockey. You mentioned Cassie Campbell-Pascal, a former national team member of Canada, one of the pioneers, with Haley Wickenheiser and Daniel Goyette and those great players. But she with Leah Hextall and Linda Cohen the other night, a little
Mhm.
while ago, did the first broadcast. And I've had Linda on my show a number of times, and she's been a pioneer. And that was really neat to see. I took a step back and I thought, I'm not going to be one of those people to be surprised. Oh, well, finally, we have three women doing a game. To me, I took the mentality of not only is it about time, but these three women are extremely capable, and it was really nice to see that. So I hope
Mhm.
there's more.
Well, I will say, just to toot our horn, we did an all women game. Cassie, Leah, and Chris Simpson
Right.
on International Women's Day on 2020. So it was actually the last hometown hockey stop before the pandemic hit.
Uh,
Um, and again, like total pioneers. Chris Simpson is one of them. She's
right.
been doing
Right.
this for 20 years. Um, yes, yes, these are great. And I think, again, we're not putting women in positions who haven't been doing this, right? These are all
Hmm.
like super competent people. I just look forward to the day where we're just in the mix, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. It's like
Yeah.
no questions asked. We're just in the mix at every level.
It's like the show In Conversation, right? You're in conversation with all that stuff. All right, let's get to the game itself. And I said off the top when I teased you coming in, yeah, we'll go through some of the details of hockey, what's happening, etc. But we've done all that, so let's talk about the game. I want your thoughts on the All-Star Game. I remember, I'm sure you do as well, the Campbell Conference against the Wales Conference. Remember those? I know, we're dating
I do,
ourselves.
of
Yeah,
course.
we're dating ourselves. I know. But the jerseys with the Campbell across and then the Wales, Gretzky with the 4-goal game, and what a show the kids putting on. I remember that like it was yesterday. The All-Star Game to me, since it's gone to the 3-on-3, it's lost a lot for me. It's not good for the goalies. They're exhausted. It's fun for goals, but I wouldn't mind it getting back to a 5-on-5. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think everybody enjoys 3-on-3. Certainly 3-on-3 overtime is entertaining. I mean,
Yes,
it's an
absolutely.
entertaining, but is an all-star game really about the game? Not
Right,
really.
right.
And so yeah, I guess it has sort of lost its luster for me though, and I hadn't quite identified what it is. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to a 5-on-5. Sure, bring it on. The more the merrier.
I think that would maybe intensify the competition a bit. I know there's some incentives for the players at the end of the game and during the game. I get it, but I just want to see it back to what it was. Even North America against Team World. I mean, we can go on and on and on about all the different times they've tried to make things different when it comes to the All Star game. But yeah, it's going to be fun regardless of what happens, and it's always a celebration of the way the game is and how it's being played. Speaking of the talent level in the game today. You've followed hockey a long time. It's through the roof. The McDavids, the Matthews, the Kirill, the Thrill. You can go on and on and on. Adam Fox in New York, Hale McCarr in Colorado. It's just a testament to the talent level. We've talked about women, but the testament to the talent level of these guys turning into men still in their late teens and jumping into an NHL franchise with a lot of pressure on them. It's been a really nice story to watch.
I mean, yeah, it's just such a different game, than when
Yeah.
I grew up, certainly. Um, It's remarkable to watch, it obviously sometimes it makes it a more dangerous game.
Right.
Like you wonder
It's too
how much
fast.
how much faster it can get.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, like, yeah, we had a Minnesota game on Monday. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, what's fun is like when you talk to older players, like Rogers Hometown Hockey, we have a ton of alumni on, and they kind of turn into, they remember their hockey fandom when they're watching somebody
Yeah.
like McDavid,
Yeah.
because he's just he's an anomaly, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's lots, like you say, like I watch Nathan McKinnon like that sometimes too. I'm just like, I can't believe the wheels on that guy.
And if you have any defensemen on your show, they probably are watching me, David, thinking, you know what, that I'm not playing because there's no chance that
Sometimes, although
I'll be
some of
able to
them
stop them.
say everybody wants to do best on best, and everybody wants,
Yeah.
I think
Accept the
defenders,
challenge. Accept the challenge.
yeah, defenders want to see what they can come up with. So
Yeah, I get it. A few more minutes left to go, and then we'll end the show. But it's been great. We'd love to have you back on. I put a list of 10 quick questions together concerning hockey, mostly. So take as long as you want to answer them. Got a few minutes to go. So here we go. Ready? With number
yeah.
one. Will Alex Ovechkin break Gretzky's 894?
Yes.
Yes. He has
Yes.
135 left to go.
I mean, I actually am a little bit superstitious. I think that guy stays healthy, and he's ageless at this point.
Will Carey Price return this season? And if he does return at some point, is he going to be back in Montreal? You can say
I
pass if you want.
I I don't claim to have any insider
Yeah,
information. I mean, I don't see it.
I'm with you. What about this one? Marc-Andre Fleury. Will he be a Blackhawk after the deadline?
That's again, that I don't have any insider
Yeah.
information, so it's all just guesses. I think they'd be ridiculous to let him go. I think yes.
The Olympics, the NHL not going. Is that the right decision?
Ugh. If I look at it from a business perspective, if I am the NHL and the owners, and the fact that you could have a large percentage of those players literally stranded in China for
Yeah.
weeks,
Mm.
I understand why the NHL made that decision, but I also know how disappointed many of the players are. And if I'm the NHL, I'm getting the World Cup back on track, and I'm
Yeah. Love that
real
competition.
quick, because that's again a best on best. They want that competition, and so I think they'd be wise to get that going ASAP.
Evander Kane. Quick thoughts on that.
Oh, I've tried to answer this question before. I have a lot of reluctance in making any generalizations. I want to say that I acknowledge that Evander Kane is a Black man in a predominantly white sport. I think that people of color in hockey are often regarded as difficult. And so, I don't claim to understand his path. But when we're talking about illegal activity, and the guy's had a lot of chances, right?
Lots.
So, do I want him on my team? I do not.
I remember when the lockout happened years ago, and there was a tweet that came out from a bunch of teams saying about the workers in the arenas. They don't have 41 games now to work, and the concession people. Evander Kane posted a picture of him in Vegas on a hotel balcony with a wad of cash, and I just thought, he said, "What lockout?" Anyway, we'll talk about that
I
another
think
time.
there's some major perspective lacking from
Yeah.
him. He's obviously, as a person, I can look at him and think he's a man in trouble.
Sure.
But listen, McDavid was, I guess, as diplomatic. I mean, he's not one to speak out anyway. But do I want to be a captain of that team and be with him in the locker room? I don't think so.
I don't know. Last one, 10 seconds. Is Tom Brady done?
No.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Would love to do it again. And stay well and stay healthy. And thanks again for the time.
Thank you.
Tara Slone joining me, Rogers Hometown Hockey. Great stuff. And follow her on Twitter. She is very outspoken and incredibly talented at what she does. And really glad to have her on. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll be back at it next time on another edition of In Conversation.